So, notice we all agree, Muslims, so Mufassal Islam, Adnan Rashid, we all agree that the Bible contradicts the Quran. We all agree that the Gospels contradict the Quran. The question is, does the Quran affirm the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of the Gospel that we have? If so, game over. Game over. Your religion's false, Muslims. Your religion is false, right? If you affirm scriptures that contradict your own scriptures, then your religion has just self-destructed. So that's what we're claiming has happened. The Muslims agree with part of what we say. They agree that that our Bible contradicts their Quran. And I point out all these verses where the Quran affirms the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of our scriptures. And so I ask, show me one verse where Allah criticizes the gospel, where he says that it's been corrupted. Just show me one. And they can't do that, and they admit that they can't. So they've basically, they're granting the entire Islamic dilemma while just avoiding the conclusion, because the conclusion is that therefore Islam is false, and they do not want to acknowledge that Islam is false. Get ready to have your mind blown, Sam.
I'm going to take shahada. You've been really I got to be honest. These sessions, you've tempted my faith like never before. I'm about to recant and take shahada, bro. Why are you doing this to me?
Sam, this is I mean, I understand that they're desperate. I understand that they're desperate and they got nothing to work with. But to keep going to Surah 3, verse 78, Adnan did it. I mean, Adnan only posted a couple of videos a couple of verses at the end of his video. And this is one of them. This is one, I mean, apart from 279, I probably see 378 most often. And it is so absolutely, silly and ridiculous. So let's go ahead and read this. So this is the comment. And again, Muslims would send me this in the chat. I mean, in the comments, Muslims would send me this. They'd quote it and they'd say, so are you going to honor your word and recite the shahada? And I told them when I posted my video, guys, make sure this is talking about the gospel, and make sure it's talking about the corruption of the text. Because when you guys Google these verses and you post them, you don't seem to read them. So please read them. All right, now let's go ahead and read it. Surah 3, verse 78. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the two most common verses I get to show that the gospel has been corrupted. The text of the gospel has been corrupted. Surah 3, verse 78. And there is indeed a group among them who twist their tongues with the book, that you may suppose it to be from the book. But it is not from the book. And they say it is from God, though it is not from God. And they knowingly speak a lie against God. Now guys, first of all, look at what the verse is saying, because it's saying the exact opposite. Right? They say they twist it with their tongues, that you would think that their words that they're saying with their mouths are from the book. But it's not from the book. Okay? So notice, Sam, once again, this would be like me saying, guys, the Quran says Muhammad is a false prophet. Don't believe in this liar. The Quran says it. So I've just said that something is from the Quran when it's not from the Quran. Would any Muslim on the planet or anywhere in history say that the Quran has been corrupted because I said that with my mouth?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's shocking, folks, as Christians, and I need the Christians to hear this, we have the tendency, if we're serious students of the Bible, to want to read things in context.
Yep.
Now, with the Quran, that's kind of difficult, because sometimes the Quran, in a chapter, the chapter will discuss one topic and then in midstream bring up something totally off topic, unrelated to what it was just discussing. But now, why do I say that? Because now notice they're quoting chapter 3, verse 78. And like a broken record, we've gone over this over and over again. I even quoted Ibn Kathir, who explained what Bukhari said and in his explanation of chapter 3, verse 78. So Ibn Kathir, in his exposition of chapter 3, verse 78, quotes Bukhari, who said, none of the words of Allah can be corrupted and changed. And then he cites Wahab bin Munabbah, who says that the Torah and the Gospel remain uncorrupt, pure, because they cannot be corrupted. And yet they still go to the passage which says nothing about the text being corrupted, but twisting it with their tongue, meaning misinterpreting the text. And there is no Christian that I'm aware of, there is no Jew that I'm aware of, that would deny that there are people, both before, during, after time Muhammad, even to this day, that do twist the Bible with their tongues, not with their pen. They don't falsify and corrupt the text, but they do misinterpret the Bible, and that's why you have Protestants and Catholics and Orthodox, and each specific group accusing the other of misinterpreting the Bible. But if we read this passage in context, in the context of chapter 3. In fact, David and I seem to show more respect to the Quran, and that's not our aim. My aim is not, I don't believe the Quran is the word of God. But it seems that we Christians, we kuffar, we kafirun, tend to show more respect for the Quran because we assume the Quran can be read contextually and clearly, and that the Quran does say things in a manner that's understandable. We're giving the Quran the benefit of the doubt that it's understandable and there's a context. It's the Muslims who are telling us, no, the Quran is not clear, cannot be understood, and it's acontextual. Irony of ironies. Because why? Folks, the answer to chapter 3, verse 78 is found in the beginning of chapter 3. Let me just real quickly go through this. Chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Chapter 3, verses 3 and 4 tells you what 378 cannot mean. Tells you what 378 cannot mean. It says, it is he who sent down to you, Muhammad, the truth, meaning the book, confirming what is between your hands. Musaddiqan lima bayna yadayhi. Literally, between your hands. This is an idiomatic expression meaning whatever Muhammad had access to in regards to the previous scriptures at that time, his Quran confirms it. Well, the only scriptures that the Jews and Christians had at his time are what we have in the Bible today. This is a fact of history, archaeology, and the textual tradition. So what does the Quran do? Doesn't falsify it by saying it's corrupt. It confirms its integrity, because the word musaddiqan, sadaqa, look up any lexical source. Sadaqa means to bear witness to a thing's veracity, to confirm its integrity, its veracity, not to falsify it. So it says, it is he who sent down to thee the truth, the book confirming what is between his hands, and he sent down the Torah and the gospel before this, being before the Quran, as a guide to mankind, and he sent down Al-Furqan. So that's number one. This very chapter says the Quran confirms the textual veracity of the scriptures that were there in the hands of the Jews and Christians, and then it names them, the Torah and the gospel. Secondly, chapter 3, verse 50. Chapter 3, this is all the same surah, folks. I'm not going to another surah. Chapter 3, verse 50, this is what is put in the mouth of Jesus, Isa. He will come to you confirming the Torah between his hands. It's وَمُصَدِّقًا, that's that verb again, sadaqa, lima bayna yadayya, what he had access to, what he could pick up and read with his own hands. He confirms the Torah in his day. Now, historically, folks, there's no argument. Historically, what Jesus had at the time is the very Old Testament you possess today, because we have copies of the Old Testament called the Dead Sea Scrolls, written before the time of Christ. We have versions of the Old Testament, and they're virtually unanimous, in spite of any variant readings, right? And Jesus confirmed that Torah in his day, which means that Jesus confirmed the Old Testament we have today. So if the Quran is true, then the Old Testament has never been corrupted. Jesus confirmed the Old Testament he had, identical to what we have today. Muhammad confirms the Old Testament that he had access to in his time, which is identical to what we have today. And he confirmed the gospel that the Christians had in his day, which we have today, because they weren't reading something different. So whatever chapter 3, verse 78 means, it cannot mean the Bible's been corrupted wholesale so that the original Torah and gospel are no longer in their pure, pristine form, let alone chapter 3, verses 113 and 114, and chapter 3, verse 199. Write these down. Chapter 3, verses 113 and 114, and chapter 3, verse 199. It says, not all of the Jews and Christians are alike. Not all the people are alike, because among them are an upright folk who read the scriptures the way they're supposed to be read, and they fear Allah and will not sell his signs for a miserable gain. So there was a group considered righteous among the Jews and Christians who read their scriptures the way it should be read and will not corrupt it for money. What else do you want? Mm-hmm. This is all chapter 3. But anyway.
All right. So let's go ahead and read that verse one more time, just so everyone remembers. Surah 3, verse 78. And there is indeed a group among them who twist with their tongues the book, that you may suppose it to be from the book, but it is not from the book. And they say it is from God, though it is not from God. And they knowingly speak a lie against God. Now, Sam, notice even, here, when it says they knowingly speak a lie, you'd have to know what the book really says
Precisely.
to know that you're
Yes,
lying.
yeah.
So this can be in no way referring to the corruption of the text. And yet, again, ladies and gentlemen, when we ask for one clear verse from the Quran, that's what we get. That is what we get. This is what an amazing religion here.
Emphasize, David, that it says a group that says, it doesn't say all of them. And the same Quran says there was another group who did recite the scriptures with integrity. That's so emphasize, yeah.
And they won't say that means the Bible's been preserved, but they will say that someone speaking out of, someone saying something. And Sam, a little side note there. I don't know a Muslim on this planet who doesn't say that some other Muslim group is misrepresenting the Quran with their mouths. I don't know one, right?
Yeah.
If you go to a peaceful Muslim, they say ISIS is misrepresenting Islam. They're distorting the meaning of Islam. Well, why does no Muslim say, well, that means the Quran's been corrupted? Because that's what we say about the Bible. If someone misrepresents the Bible with their mouths, that means the text has been corrupted. Therefore, if ISIS is misrepresenting the Quran, or if Shias are misrepresenting the Quran, or if Ahmadis are misrepresenting the Quran, that means the Quran has been corrupted. No Muslim on the planet would say that. Why? Because when they're talking about their own book, somehow, in this particular case, in order to defend their book, their logical reasoning ability turns on for a brief moment. And they say, wait a minute, someone's saying something about a book and misquoting it and distorting it. That would have nothing to do with the text being corrupted. They understand that because it's to defend their book. As soon as they want to attack the Bible, they have to turn their reasoning ability off completely so that any statement about the book qualifies as corruption of the text. And they just don't see it. But guess what? We're going to keep pointing it out until they do see it. And boy, is it going to be a fun ride along the way.